Kia ora tātou katoa. Hoi no, kānui te mihi kia tātou e whakatatanu mai ana kia tātou I tēnei wāhi kōrero. Kia ora rā. Hoi no, e te kahurangi e Naida, kānui te mihi kā koe. Ai whakai anu koe ki te noho pēnei, kia kōrero he kia tātou I te whakamininga. E te tuakana e te Ropu, kānui te mihi kā koe e hoa. I think kua pai ngā buttons ya nei and we can hear you. And can you hear us? Are you in and good to go? Oh, aputono ana ngā kōrero. We might just start, and while Te Ropu's getting those buttons sorted, Naida, we might just start into our kōrero, but Kaparangi will be in the back there somewhere making it all happen, Te Ropu. Come back soon. Naida, tēnā ra hoki koe. Thank you for Saturday. It was a wonderful day and an important day sitting with whānau down your end of Tai Tokerau and our end really, but kia ora rā. I wanted to tonight just share and hear from you as one of the our party list members, and as the three of you stood on Saturday, you could clearly see these three generations of expertise, and I'm keen to hear from both you and Te Ropu about that. And so we're posing this conversation as one that's it's about prosperity in paradise, as opposed to what, unfortunately, Tai Tokerau can be named as poverty in paradise. So we're going to change all of that around to prosperity in paradise. Can you just share some of your thoughts about that?
Oh, I'm absolutely delighted that the Māori Party today has got itself together, and that we have a magnificent 7 who are standing right across the country for all of us. And each one of our magnificent 7 is unique in their own skill and their own thoughts about ngai tātou te iwi Māori, mai tēnā rohe, tēnā rohe. And I'm delighted, absolutely thrilled, because we are the only ones who can go into Parliament and live in our own skin. We don't have to give anything of us away to be who we are in Parliament. Hakua Parliament he wāhi tauiwi ke tēnā, and we know that there are times when we need to negotiate our way through, kia whiwhi e tātou, what we need to achieve on behalf of our people. We don't have to come outside of our skin, our Māori, who we are. We go in with our whakapapa and we just live according to our whakapapa. So it's wonderful for the Tai Tokerau. You know, it has been termed poverty in paradise, but paradise no less. And in the Tai Tokerau, we have a jewel in the crown of the Tai Tokerau called the Kaipara Harbour. Even though there's the Hokianga, there's our harbours, we are in paradise, regardless of what anyone might call us. And the thing is this, for the Māori Party, we have come together to agree that the master servant of the colonial government will no longer apply to us and should no longer apply to us. We've grown up. We have grown up. We don't need permission. Ai, oh, tino, Mariameno. And thank you for you and your whānau agreeing, because it's a sacrifice. It is a sacrifice that of your life, of your livelihood, and to give in order for te minenga katoa to achieve. So thank you, Ra, Mariameno. Thank you.
Tēnā koe. Naida, you know, I was reflecting when you know, the journey that it took. So I can't remember the number, but when I first joined Ngāti and Health Trust, for instance, and the small number of Māori providers back then, and the number that now are just across the nation. And you were part of that journey, you and Lynette and Rob and Gwen and many others that, you know, and when you say grow up, we've grown up. That is absolutely what I see, in which we're always going to grow up. Now we are in a place where we've kind of grown right back into our own rangatiratanga, and it's like, it's our time. This is the timing, perversely, coming out of COVID. This is like, it's the perverse opportunity to step right back into that place, that 1840 promise, and just take it back. So when you're saying, you know, growing up, it's a funny thing to have to say, but it's in the context of, you know, tolerating the colonizers and tolerating that type of oppression for so long. So, yes, I think it's a new and brave new Māori world. I am preparing for a treaty-based future. And that's te Ropu. I rongo atu koe? Okay. Oh, perfect. Kia ora me te. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. We're just, Naida and I, just getting carried away with ourselves about the future that we're part of resetting for our Mokopuna. Can I just hear from you, and thank you for accepting the to be on the party list for Tai Tokerau. And you have a particular journey, you know, and experience, different to Naida's and then different to our younger fella, so that generational expertise. Just talk to us a little bit about that in this prosperity and paradise paradigm.
Kia ora. Kei a koe te kahurangi. I've been privileged to follow behind people like Kahurangi and Sid Jackson and Haki Wihongi, and be really close to be there tono as such, and being brought up in Mōroa, you know, and raised by my two famous leaders, my grandparents, who taught us how to make good decisions based on common sense and what really matters. I suppose, and that's what the Māori Party reminds me of how we have to be that simple, because if you have to be quite clever to be really dumb. That's the latest sort of thinking that people have. And so it brings me to that prosperity around us in Tai Tokerau with our kai, and now we've got heaps of wai because of the flooding, but looking at how we work in around kai, wai, whare and whenua, which goes into what is our entitlements. And I suppose one of the most amazing things for me is that when you say you believe in me, believe in you, I have to bring it together in tautoko Māori Party and believe in us for who we are and what we do. And I'm really excited, and thank you for the opportunity for being a part of something that we should all be a part of. We should normalise the Māori Party for who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Pono.
Kia ora, pono marika e.
Wake up in the morning, that's all you think about is being Māori, you know? Nothing else. It's not about who we have to sort of pretend to be or try to assimilate. We do it quite well because we've been oppressed for so long. We do it naturally. It's quite unnatural to be ourselves. So without too much pressure on us, I think it's you got to believe in yourself, like what the kaupapa is for the Māori Party.
It is absolutely. We found our feet, and it's landed on our whenua. Our feet hasn't landed on anybody else's whenua. We found our feet, and it's landed on our own whenua. I Aotearoa nei.
Aye.
Koia tēnā. Ngai Māori
Kia ora.
mō Māori.
Aye. Some of the questions that come up, and I'm just trying to check them here, but I you know, if we envisage that future and we are starting to design for that future more and more, what do you, and we look across our iwi networks too, because in the COVID time, and we all know and understand that poverty predated COVID, and particularly for Māori. In fact, I heard the Prime Minister say this morning in one of her stand up at the lectern discussions that she knows that as our unemployment rises, the most whānau that will suffer will be young and Māori. So, and it's interesting when she says it, because it's far too easy, you know. It's just said as if that's just accepted as a reality of our time. But it might have been said as if it was, you know, no, e aroha ki te tangata, and it probably was actually, but when it's said so nearly in a very reasonable and accepted way, that in itself just has it's so wrong. It's so bad. We have to just correct it, which means you have to tear it down and replace it. Naida, kai a koe?
Well, if we look at that word poverty, when tauiwi talk poverty, they are talking about financial poverty, about the inability to have money. And it's not as though we're not prepared to go to work for it. It's about financial poverty. But we are not suffering whānau poverty. We are not suffering hapu poverty. We are not suffering iwi poverty. As a matter of fact, we didn't know that we were poor until somebody told us. When I was growing up, we had everything. Kai moana, kai o te ngahere, kai o ngā mara kumara nei. We had everything. And yet we were told we were poor. And we didn't know we were poor. So what exactly is the poverty that is being spoken about today? Because we're not struggling with whānau hapu iwi poverty at all. We, in actual fact, are wealthy in that area. In that area. The high unemployment is what they gave us. It's what the government gave us. They have given us unemployment. They have given us a broken education system that we had to develop our own kohanga reo, our own kura kaupapa, our own system that served us, because they gave us a broken system. And we are still operating in their broken system, so they can tell us that we are struggling with poverty.
Yes.
E mara, it's in te au o te kanuhi Māori. It's how we view us through the pupil of our own eye.
Kia ora,
Which
Naida.
is something, of course, they can never do.
No.
Aye.
Kia ora, Naida. Te Ropu, you all know that Naida and many others of the dames have, through the claim that was sat for 2 days last week in Wellington, and you would have seen some of that live streamed in Naida kia koe too. You would have seen that, and you would have heard and listened to mummies and whānau talking and weeping about our Mokopuna. And that, I understand that's going to go on for a few more days. Te Ropu, what's your take on the tribunal hearing and on the beginnings? It's a contextual hearings, apparently, for 2 days. You know, because you work with mummies and daddies and Mokopuna and nanas, you know what it is in Kaikoe.
Yep. I think it's a long time overdue, and it's very bold of the ngā kahurangi o te ao to stand up for our babies and our mokopuna, because we're all grandmothers and mothers, and certainly can relate to, you take my duckling away, you're going to get it. You know, there's a price, there's utu to be paid. And I think that the report, the 7AA review report came out, I think, in Anahi or yesterday, and says it's made great gains for us. And so my review back to it was, I've seen very little, if not more, dissension amongst what the system of how it operates and what it does mean to work in partnership. And I think I'd welcome that, for us to revisit what the partnership looks like, and the resource and the equity, and that's something I think that we still have to carry on about, because like for Ngāpuhi, 1,400 children are in the care, you know. That's not an easy number to sort of go and get 1,400 safe whānau for those babies to go into, but certainly that's our business, not anyone else's. You know, as Māori, we should have we should be leading how that happens. I think there is a much smarter way of us connecting with those mandatory services, and before the mamai happens and occurs within those whānau, because what you're doing is you've actually taken our PP away, but then you've double traumatized by the taking and the institution of the system and laws that just create that huge crisis. So you traumatize a whole entire hapu and iwi after that, because it becomes everyone's business, you know. I think there should, and you've been in Oranga Tamanaki, I've never worked for them, and that was the reason why, because they challenge us about being us.
I think, I just, so, and you're right. I mean, I worked back there in 1989, 1988 when Wild Delta 2 came through. And there weren't many of us, many Māori, I mean, across the whole country working, but we had a hope of it, because Wild Delta 2 was probably one of the first pieces of literature, really, and the act that even used Te Reo Māori, it dared to use Te Reo Māori in the legislation. So we got excited about this. We saw the possibilities. And I certainly remember it closely, because one of the very first FGC care and protection coordinators, I filled that role in Taupo across two wharetoa. And I remember the very first hui we had, we approached it as a hui, obviously. So hui means at least 100, and that was the number that were with us at that particular time. And we ran it that way because this was our whānau and we knew how to engage. It just got too expensive in the end and too brown, and it was cut, and unfortunately it never ever came back in the way in which we hoped, and then many of us left. I think this is a different time. There are many of us that are in the system now, and are as hopeful as I was back then, but they're starting to see the changes, Naida. So for you, you've seen those, you've seen them come through hospital, Naida, you've seen them come through for many years.
Yeah, and the thing for us is that we must not normalize at all that master-servant behavior. And as well as that, you know, for us to remember, every agency in this country, every state agency in this country, none of it has an accountability back to Māori for the delivery of services to Māori in those services at all. To actually come anywhere close to Te Tiriti or Waitangi, no way would they dare to account to Māori for the delivery of their services to Māori. As well as that, the latest health and the Health and Disability System Review by Heather Simpson is tinkering around the edges, tinkering around the edges on a master-servant that Māori, again, are in an advisory only to the Minister of Health. How dare they? How dare they? Who do they think they're talking to? They think they're talking to someone that doesn't, who's not educated, someone who doesn't have the experience that we've had, that they would write a report like that in 2020 and expect that nothing would be done about it. And how many more reviews? The name that they had for it was vulnerable children. The iwi chairs did not accept that our tamariki were to be vulnerable. It was the iwi chairs that insisted on changing the name to Oranga Tamariki so that that service could apply the kaupapa of Oranga Tamariki, the Māori of it. Instead of that, they held fast to their vulnerable children. There's got to be a change, and there will be a change. And the Māori Party, with its magnificent 7, is going to be the change that's required by all of us, needed by all of us.
Yeah.
There's no doubts whatsoever.
Yeah.
I could go on, I could go.
Yeah, no, it's marvelous. No, it just, honestly, it just takes me back to all the efforts over the years by many to break through. Like when I'm hearing the change now, and we're unapologetically and you know, and you hear amongst the magnificent 7 about what it means to come out and be a liberated magnificent 7, you know.
Yeah.
But it's not like the 7 of us haven't had that fight in us, but it's not like that. The fight has already been there, but it is the timing of this, I think, is exceptional. And I think we're breaking through. It's a tipping point. When you talked about tinkering around the edges, that is exactly the terminology that Judge Beecroft used when he gave evidence, when the expert advisory panel for MCOT, that system, same idea, same report, expert advisory, same report. It's hopeless. It fails. It fails most people, but it fails mainly Māori in the most deadly and detrimental way. So anything that they're trying to do is tinkering around the edges. And ironically, you're making those same comments about the report that's sitting on your desk.
Absolutely. And let's take, you know, our whenua in Tāmaki Makaurau, the one that we have people living on the whenua to stop it from being taken from us. The fact that we have to do that, the fact that we have to march down Queen Street to stop the awful and rubbish being tipped into the dome that could leach out to the Kaipara Harbour. All of that is just unreal. And that's today. In today's so-called educated country that we're in. Anyway, e wera anau ia nene.
Ara mai te tai kōrero pai. Te Ropu, in our beloved kaikohe and the things that you see on a daily basis, and I know you've renewed the clinic services that you want to bring through that are essentially embedded in tikanga. Can you just share a bit more about that, because those are steps towards prosperity and designing it in the way so that at the least we can succeed or even fail on our own terms. You know, because that's one of the things that's forever. I'm like, we failed, but it's what you're saying, Naida, is we failed on terms that weren't even set by us and don't even understand us. So we were never going to succeed. Not only that,
we do have the solutions for their problems upon us. We've got the solutions. Absolutely.
But no, ka tika, te Ropu, pehea koe.
Yeah, I think ours is called whānau order, as the whānau ora clinic for Kaikohe that has only ever had one hauora, one medical centre in Kaikohe, so you didn't have a choice. My parents didn't have a choice as to who they go to the doctor. It's Broadway, Kaikohe, that's it. So we've been able to work alongside them and say we will be setting up the clinic in partnership as a whānau ora clinic. But what that provides is, so because our whānau kotiti so much, if they ended up in West Auckland out in Rānui and there's a whānau ora clinic, their registration with us, they can go to the doctor in West Auckland, South at the 8 other clinics in Auckland.
Right.
Those have been the decisions that we've made to ensure our whānau can get, and using telehealth methods, you know, for whānau who are out in Otawa and stuck in the floods, you know, certainly we've had to look at all those different measures, and the whānau that work there have to be able to do at least 4 things before they even get to sit behind looking after our whānau, because that's what the expectation is.
So, Ropu, one of the things that I hear, and I wanted to just get your feel, both from you and Naida. So one of the comments that kept coming through, and I just picked it up a little bit when we talked about this thing called kōtiti, you know, kōtiti haere. You know, there was a time where they were he momo tēnā. He momo rangatira tēnā. Well, yeah, nei, oh man, you know, it's like, you know, we're transient. Oh, I swear, just like everything we do is made wrong, and yet there are critical elements in that whole kia kōtiti haere was all, and now we've got these whānau ora navigator roles. I crap up and go, wait, you know, it's like, wait a minute, now we like that because it's called that, but over here you're punished for being having these elements. And I understand it's in the context of our whānau well and safe and flourishing. They're never going to, because the system it's not designed for flourish. It's only designed to pin down and to diminish people. And I say that not because it's a theory, but I've observed it for 40 and more years. And so I think we're in that next step of, rather than inching our way out of poverty, it's the big leap here, people. Like, this is the big bang now. Right? This is the big Māori bang.
Yeah.
It's never mind the inching forward out of it. Now it's like, kānui tēnā mō tēnei, hara me mea iti noiho. This is our time. It's the big bang, the next big bang. Pehea e Naida, i tēnā.
Well, I mean, if we're on the subject of kotiti, and the worst kotiti that ever happened to us was a fellow called Captain Cook, who came over here to diminish Marika.
Yes.
So, e hara ko ngā kotiti noiho, and that's where that was learned from. When we talk about kotiti, we're talking about kotiti from one whānau to the next whānau. We don't talk about kotiti, pēnei te kotiti a Captain Cook, me ana uri katoa. Haere mai ki konei. So the point is this: it doesn't matter what happens to us or for us, the solution is with us. We have the solutions for anything that comes our way. And they're not only solutions of today, they are solutions left to us in ngā poropititanga of our own people. Every one of our tribes have offered prophecies for us to remember for our Mokopuna of today. And exactly what is the translation of Mokopuna? Moko ko te tā moko a te tupuna awa tātou o te rādei. And so everything that we say and do relates back to our whakapapa and who we are. And so I'm just so excited, Mariameno. I am excited that the party Māori ko tēnā te kupu no tātou ka tai atu ki roto ki te ana o ngā raiona, that we have the courage to walk straight into the lion's den and change that den hei oranga mō tātou, from the inside out. Of course, we can work from the top down, from the bottom up, from the outside in. And that's exactly what the Party Māori is going to do. Absolutely. Without a shadow of a doubt. We have no fears. Why? Because we have identified all our enemies. We know what they look like. We know what shape their heads are. We know where they're coming from. They can no longer hide because we know who they are. We have no fears, but we have all the solutions. Absolutely, absolutely.
Tēnā koe, Naida. Hara mai, all right. Gee, I'd vote for you. Easy. Te Ropu. So we are. It's in every great conversation, we run out of time, but for this time anyway. And I know we're just going to continue to have conversations that that name prosperity in the name of being Māori. And I'm excited, but I want to hear from both of you. Just in closing up, what's you know, if you could imagine prosperity in your mind for, because I know Te Ropu, when you're always talking about your mokopuna and the way it's typical, it's the real puna ki te puna, you know, obsession in the best possible way. You know, in the best, and I hear you often talk about your mokopuna like that. So can you just share that in some closing comments for us, please?
Yeah, so with kaikohe and with Ngāpuhi, I think we, and all iwi te kahu o Tānui gave us all the opportunity to be operational in our way, and there was there was no way anything could happen without iwi, and that has inspired me to the point that if our young people vote, and they have to vote for the Māori Party, and why? It's because who they are, and they trust. They will trust us. They don't trust anybody else. They trust us to do the right thing for them, to pave that way of a future that is safe and secure and very prosperous, where they will thrive in. So I just look at kaikohe and I think about, we've got a high population of those 18-year-olds. So I've been talking to my crew around the similar kaupapa that Awarangi was talking about on Saturday. But we do the young people, we get the young people, and they'll work. Young people will work with young people around how important they are in this whole election, that they become the forefront of our election, not the ones that we have to pick up the pieces of all the time. So that's what's exciting for me, and that's what we're going to stand up for, the Māori Party, in the next week when I get back and have a young crew, because we're nanas and we don't know what goes on, and we don't know. We want to TikTok, but they don't want us to. They get shy.
I know.
They don't want us in that picture. I just think, you know, how we can look at those opportunities of bringing manufacturing back offshore, and get over the Asian buy 3 T-shirts for $10 in Bali and Thailand, and come back to what really matters around some really good quality Māori innovation, really, because I've been working with some really awesome, innovative young Māori people in their own businesses. So that's some of the stuff I think we'll be able to support in terms of the Māori Party. Kia ora.
Kia ora, te Ropu. Naida, do you have any closing comments? But just before you do, I see that there is lots and lots of kōrero. Te nuinga e mihi atu ana ki a tātou. Kia kaurua, kia te Ropu, kia koe e Naida. So, kia pai, all right?
Ka pai. Hoi no, I hope to, you know, I aspire to inspire before I expire. I runga.
Hi, Kelly.
So on that, I hear clearly what JT said on Saturday. And so I've got 20 plus of my whānau lined up to vote for Mariameno Kapa-Kingi mo te Tai Tokerau. Ai marika.
Marika. Oh,
20 plus.
Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you again, Koutou Katoa, whakarongo mai ana. This has been a blast, this kōrero tonight, just saying. And all of these messages of love and support and kindness and commitment. So you can see they're in the same mood as us. They are there to vote. So in closing, you know, again, it's Calvin is number 2 on the Labour list, so I'm number 1 on everyone else's list, which means tick Tai Tokerau votes Kapa-Kingi. So I rungi tērā, tēnei te mihi auraki a Koutou, 2 votes. Tēnā koutou, tēnā roki tātou e te katoa. Kia ora rā.
Kia ora rā.